Hey there. Ready to dig into something we probably all take for granted. This time on the deep dive, we're taking a bite out of the history of birthday cake.
It's funny you should say that, a deep dive into birthday cake.
I mean, a whole cake just for one person.
Right.
When you think about it, it's a little extra.
It really is. But that's what makes this so fascinating.
Yeah,
This isn't just about frosting and sprinkles.
right.
It's about uncovering the cultural and historical forces that shaped this beloved tradition.
Okay, so let's get this cake started. Where do we even begin with something like this? What's the oldest evidence we have for birthday cake?
Believe it or not, we're going way back, even before cake as we know it existed.
Okay.
We're talking about the Neolithic period,
Oh, wow.
somewhere between 9,000 to 2,000 BC.
Wow, that's...
Back then, they had these simple flatbreads made from crushed grains, which were like the ancestors of cakes.
Wow, so we're talking about something almost like a prehistoric pancake situation.
Exactly.
Okay.
And while those early flatbreads weren't necessarily birthday specific,
Right.
they give us a glimpse into how people have been celebrating with food for millennia.
That's amazing. Okay, so we've got flatbreads in the Stone Age. When do we get to something that actually resembles a birthday cake?
Well, the ancient Greece had something pretty close.
Okay.
They were really into celebrating their gods,
Right.
and they'd bake these round cakes shaped like the moon for Artemis, the goddess of the moon.
Hold on, moon-shaped cakes? That's pretty creative
It is.
for Artemis.
And they were onto something with the whole candle thing, too. They'd put lit candles on these cakes, believing that the smoke carried their wishes up to the gods.
No way! So the whole Make-A-Wish thing goes that far back. That's wild. I always thought that was a more recent tradition.
It's incredible how these things evolve, right?
Yeah, it makes you wonder, were the Greeks celebrating the gods' actual birthdays, or was it more about honoring them on special occasions?
That's a great question. It's more likely they were marking specific festivals or events dedicated to those deities,
Yes.
not necessarily birthdays as we think of them now. The idea of celebrating individual birthdays was a much later development.
So the ancient Greeks were all about those mooncakes and honoring the gods. But they weren't the only ones who had a thing for cakes, right? Weren't the Romans known for their baking skills too?
Absolutely. The Romans were famous for their feasts and celebrations, and cakes definitely played a role.
Right.
They had these special cakes made with flour, nuts, yeast, and even honey for sweetness.
Really?
Can you imagine honey back then? Talk about a luxury item.
Wow, honey in a cake. That sounds incredibly decadent, especially for that time period. I'd love to get my hands on one of those ancient Roman recipes. But it sounds like these cakes were probably reserved for the elite, right? Like
Yeah.
emperors and senators and whatnot.
You're probably right. It seems like birthdays were a much bigger deal if you were a man of status turning 50.
Interesting.
We don't have a ton of records about regular folks and birthday cakes during Roman times.
Okay, so birthday celebrations, at least the elaborate kind, seem to have been a bit of a status symbol even way back then. It makes you think about how much emphasis we put on birthdays today and how that's changed over time.
Exactly. And this is where our deep dive takes a fascinating turn.
Yes.
Because while the Romans had their fancy cakes,
Right.
it was really the Germans, starting around the Middle Ages, who helped shape the birthday cake tradition we know and love today.
Ow. German cakes, tell me more. Don't they have that whole Kinderfest thing?
That's right, the Kinderfest.
Kinderfest.
Yeah, it's like the granddaddy of modern birthday parties for kids.
Kinderfest. Okay, I'm picturing like kids in lederhosen running around with gingerbread men. Am I close?
Not quite, but you're right to think of it as a joyous occasion.
Oh, yeah.
What's fascinating is that before this,
Yeah.
celebrating children's birthdays just wasn't that common.
Interesting.
The Kinderfest really put kids in the spotlight.
So it's like the Germans invented childhood birthday parties as we know them.
Pretty much. And they went all out with these incredible layered cakes called Geburtstagstorten.
Geburtstagstorten. I could get used to saying that. Were these cakes as ornate as the stuff we see today?
Oh, picture this.
Okay.
It's the Middle Ages,
Okay.
and you're a kid at your Kinderfest.
Uh-huh.
This massive layered cake, almost like a tower, is brought out just for you.
Wow.
It's decorated with candles, each one representing a year of your life.
Okay, now that's a birthday cake. That makes a statement.
Yeah.
And talk about a fire hazard, right? So many candles.
I know, right? But there's more to those candles than meets the eye.
Okay.
Back then, people believed that evil spirits were especially drawn to you on your birthday.
Wait, what? Evil spirits, why on your birthday?
They thought it was the one day when the veil between the worlds was thin and you were most vulnerable.
Oh, no.
So they had all these traditions to protect you, and the Kinderfest, with its noise, merriment, and those bright candles, was part of it.
Okay, that's a birthday twist I wasn't expecting. So the cake, or maybe more like the candles, were supposed to ward off those evil spirits.
Exactly.
I guess a sugar rush is a little less intimidating.
It's amazing how these traditions evolve, isn't it? It makes you wonder about the origins of blowing out the candles and making a wish.
Right. Is that a Kinderfest thing, too?
It's hard to say for sure. It's like piecing together clues from history.
Right.
We know that by the 1700s, German children were getting cakes with candles for each year of their life, plus an extra one for good luck.
So maybe that's the origin of the wish, the extra candle.
Quite possible. And there's this great anecdote about Count Ludwig von Zinzendorf from 1746.
Okay.
Apparently, they baked him a birthday cake so large,
Wow.
it had a candle for every single year of his life.
Okay, first of all, how many candles are we even talking about here? That must have been one well-lit room. And second, what kind of oven do you need to bake a cake that big? That's some serious dedication right there.
Right. It really shows how important this tradition had already become.
Yeah.
And while the exact origins of the birthday wish might be lost to time, it's clear that by the 1800s, blowing out candles and making a wish were becoming increasingly common.
So we've got the ancient Greeks with their mooncakes, the Romans with their honey-sweetened treats, and the Germans really solidifying the whole birthday cake for kids thing with their Kinderfest. But something tells me the story doesn't end there, right?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
We're about to enter the era that truly made birthday cake a universal experience.
Okay.
The Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
Buckle up, because this is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I am so there. But first, a quick question. We've been talking about all these fancy cakes for centuries, but were they always as accessible as they are today? Like, could just anyone whip up a Geburtstagstorten back in the day? Flour, sugar, eggs? You know, and now that you mention it, those weren't always easy to come by.
Right, exactly.
Especially back then.
Before the Industrial Revolution, a fancy birthday cake was really a luxury.
Oh, yeah.
Only the wealthy could enjoy.
I see.
Ingredients were expensive, and baking was labor-intensive.
It's like those honey cakes the Romans were so into.
Absolutely.
A status symbol as much as a treat.
Absolutely. But then the 1800s rolled around, and the Industrial Revolution changed everything.
Yeah.
Suddenly, mass production made ingredients cheaper and more available.
I see.
We get flour mills, sugar refineries,
Right.
even those prepackaged cake mixes that would make baking a birthday cake a breeze.
Oh, man. Those cake mixes were a game changer. Talk about making birthdays easier for busy parents.
Right. And it wasn't just the ingredients.
Right.
New technologies meant bakers could experiment with more elaborate designs and decorations.
Okay.
We see the rise of those intricate frosting techniques,
Right.
multi-tiered cakes, and all the decorative elements we associate with birthday cakes today.
It's like the Industrial Revolution unleashed this whole creative explosion in the birthday cake world. Suddenly, everyone could have their cake and decorate it too. We've come a long way from those simple flatbreads.
We really have. And speaking of cakes around the world,
Yeah.
it's fascinating to note that birthday cake, as ubiquitous as it is,
Right.
isn't the only game in town.
Wait, really? You mean there are places where people don't do the whole birthday cake thing?
You bet. Remember those ancient Egyptian cock cookies we talked about?
Yeah.
They're still enjoyed for birthdays today.
Wow.
Fragrant with spices like nutmeg and cinnamon.
So instead of blowing out candles on a cake, you might be wishing on a spiced cookie. That's pretty cool. Any other birthday treats we should know about?
Oh, tons.
Okay.
In Russia, for example, birthdays often call for sharlotka,
Okay.
a delicious apple pie.
Interesting.
It's got this beautiful rustic charm
Oh, wow.
and a flavor that's perfect for celebrating.
Okay. You're making me hungry. But it's fascinating how these traditions vary. It's like everyone has their own unique way of marking a birthday.
Exactly. And it reminds us that even something as seemingly universal as birthday cake has its own cultural nuances and history.
It's like you always say, there's always more to uncover when we take a deep dive.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So the next time you're at a workday party, take a moment to appreciate that slice of cake.
Yeah.
It's not just dessert. It's a symbol of celebration with roots stretching back thousands of years. From ancient flatbreads to elaborate Kinderfest creations to the democratizing power of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
It's a story of culture, ingenuity, and the simple joy of celebrating another year of life.
And who knows what the future holds for birthday cake?
That's right.
Maybe we'll see even more diverse flavors, Personalized designs or entirely new traditions emerge.
Right.
The possibilities are endless as long as we keep celebrating.
Absolutely. And on that sweet note, thanks for joining us on this delicious deep dive into the history of birthday cake. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. In the meantime, tell us, what are some unique birthday traditions you've come across? Share your stories in the comments below.